All right, well, welcome to another episode of the Sports Guys. Really happy you're here this week. We're here to talk about something I'm very passionate about, and that is the game of pickleball, the sport that is the fastest growing sport in the United States and one of the fastest growing in the entire world. There's now 4.8 million players in the United States alone that play on a regular basis. We're really honored to have Autumn Moyer here with us tonight. How are you, Autumn?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Really glad you joined. Autumn is president of Play Pickleball, which is a really great organization. I've actually been a customer of for 2 years. I've been playing in their leagues here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and it's been really, really fun. I really look forward to it every season. I've won a couple medals, so that's been really cool. And but you run a great organization, Autumn. So really
Thank you.
glad you're here tonight.
Thank you so much. It's always an honor to have you a part of the leagues as well.
Thank you so much. And of course, Robbie, how you doing?
Doing great.
So some key pickleball stats for 2024. You got 36.5 million pickleball players in the United States. Pickleball growth over the last 3 years is 223%. The largest age bracket, I found this really interesting. 28% of players are between 18 and 34. I think that's a really good graphic for the sport, that players my kids' age are starting to play it. Number of places to play pickleball in the U.S., 13,000, almost 14,000 places now to play, which was not your experience back in 2013. Your pickleball paddle market size in 2021 was 152 million. I can't imagine what that is now in 2024. 3 years later, it must be triple that probably. And then you have your forecasted compound annual growth rate of the sport at 7.7 through 2028. That's what they're projecting. Any thoughts about kind of these stats and showing the growth of the game?
It really does blow my mind every time I look at the slide. When you sent it to me, my jaw dropped. It truly did, because we already talked about the age. Back when we started 11 years ago, it was all the elderly people. So to see that that's now the largest age bracket is 18 to 34, and now I'm a year out of that.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
That blows my mind. The number of places to play is amazing. And here's something else that's interesting is the paddle market. Back in I want to say 2015, we got into the paddle market, play
You
pickleball.
did? Oh.
We did, and we were selling some paddles, and we were kind of like that broker, where we offered a bunch of paddles and sold them out. But the margins at that time for a paddle were pennies on the dollar, because paddles back then, the most expensive paddle was maybe $65, $70. I mean, nowadays you can't buy a paddle for that. And so
it's funny you say that. It's funny you say that, Autumn, because I've never been a snob in anything in my life, but I've kind of become a little bit of a paddle snob, because I think personally that my Diadem Warrior is the best paddle on the market. I've tried a bunch of them. I've tried the Jula, and then I see these new people come in and they're trying to hit with a wooden paddle that is incredibly thin, like a beginner paddle, and I wince. It's just painful to see them try to struggle with these really bad paddles that are really hard to play with.
Yeah,
So I hate to say that I've become a paddle snob, but I kind of have.
I love it. I'm the opposite. I am the opposite. I've had two paddles in the 11 years that I've played.
Have you? Okay.
Yes. And I still to this day have to take a picture of my paddle every once in a while, just in case I lose it, so I can tell somebody what it looked like.
Oh my gosh. Well, I found my paddle. I will say that I've kind of settled on one and I'm staying with it. So makes a lot of sense. Participation rates for popular sports. This blew me away more than anything. Not only do you have 4.8 million playing weekly in the United States, but I saw this 5.2 million playing football at the very bottom, soccer, baseball, tennis, golf, basketball, and then pickleball being the third most participation sport in the country, behind running and biking. So, I mean, it's not just exploded. It's like off the charts now that this sport it's the most played sport. Any thoughts?
I think it goes back to what Rob was saying. People were itching to get something active. It's a sport that you can play with your friends and be out. But here's the other thing. When I look at this chart, biking and running, it really doesn't take much skill to do those things.
Mhm.
And so it's of no surprise to me that pickleball is third, because I would agree at any level, well, at any beginner level, it really doesn't take much skill once you understand the basic rules of it to play pickleball. Whereas basketball, golf, we talked about the golf and tennis, you know, all of that takes some practice, a lot of, you know, training and
But did you think that 10 million more people would be playing pickleball regularly than basketball? That really shocked me.
I think the one that shocked me the most is golf. I feel like golf, I feel like there are so many people that play golf. But yeah, I would agree. This chart is definitely staggering. It's amazing.
And you know, the tennis players that really despise pickleball, because there are some of them, right? They're very kind of tennis centric and tennis, you know, snobs, I guess. They must hate to see this, that
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
pickleball has far surpassed tennis now. This goes to what Rob was saying earlier.
I think this graph illustrates what we were talking about, really. I mean,
It does. It really does. All right, so here is kind of the brass tacks. This is where the rubber meets the road. Why is pickleball popularity exploding? What are the reasons? And these are the ones I could come up with. The first one is easy learning curve. You mentioned this earlier, Autumn, and I did as well. It's just a simple game to learn. It's easy for beginners to grasp. It's easy for them to move up from 2-0 to 2-5 to 3-0. Serve mastery. Mastering the serve doesn't require extensive training, unlike tennis or other sports. You can pretty quickly, within a couple weeks, learn how to serve, you know, relatively well. Grip versatility. You have your scorekeeping challenges. Navigating the scoring system presents minor hurdle for newcomers, but I noticed that within 4 to 5 weeks, they've got it. You know, even Rob's boys are starting to understand it now. Cheap to play, not expensive to get into it. Once you buy a really good paddle, that's all you really need. Injury rates, especially for older players, you know, when older players are trying to play basketball or some of these other really physical sports, there's a lot of injuries. Whereas there are injuries in pickleball for sure, but definitely fewer than some other sports. The rapid improvement argument I talked about, where you can move up from beginner to intermediate or even high intermediate levels pretty quickly. I mean, really good athletes are doing it within 3 to 6 months. You have this addictive appeal. Millions of players saying they're so addicted to it, it's all they can think about. And then you have lots of health advantages: cardiovascular, stress relief, joint friendly, reflex improvement, social interaction, and well-being. So I'd love for you guys to just kind of give me your take on each of these. And then if there's ones that I left off the list, what are some other reasons you guys can think of that pickleball craze is happening?
Yeah, I would agree with all of these. I think that these are all very, very valid reasons as why the sport is growing. I know for myself, you know, I have 2 kids under the age of 6, and I need my my stress relief and that time to interact with adults. And so that to me is one of the reasons why I do it. And I definitely personally have have acquired that addictive appeal. One thing I have not mentioned regarding our time with pickleball and playing over the last 11 years was that I personally played maybe, I mean, out of the first 8 years of us being in business, I played maybe 8 times. I mean, I played in my league, but competitively, I really didn't play much. And it was about 2.5 years ago when I played in a PPA as a 2-5. I just wanted to see what this craze was all about regarding the PPA. So I registered at a 2-5. I was 2 and out and didn't win a match. And that's all it took for me to say, okay, I'm going to be addicted to this. And I went from a 2-5 to now today a 4-0, and, you know, in little time. And so it's a very addictive thing once you catch the bug. I will have to agree with the lower injury rates. I think if you talk to any chiropractor or PT in the area, they are going to think otherwise. I feel like majority of their clients nowadays are now coming in with pickleball injuries.
Yeah, I think the lower injury rates compared to other sports, but I think
that would be fair.
I really should have qualified this, and I should have said, but there's still a lot of injuries.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
well,
Rob,
because there's still a pretty large amount of people who are playing who are elderly. It is getting younger all the time, but there is still an element of the elderly, and there's a good reason for that. The lobe of the brain that helps ward off dementia has to do with fast reaction sports, and most doctors that deal with the brain and those kind of illnesses encourage first number one is ping pong, second is pickleball, because they take rapid reaction decision making, and that keeps your brain fresh and you don't succumb to some of the deterioration that happens. So pickleball is one of the absolute highest things you can do for the mental freshness. So
is that kind of like the same skills you get out of playing like video games that are real fast and reflex oriented kind of thing?
They do encourage a lot of retirement homes to do video games for a lot of the same reason. However, they want to encourage an activity level while you're doing it. So it's better to play pickleball or ping pong than it is to play a video game. But a video game is better than just sitting down and staring at a television.
So you're saying, Rob, to this health advantages to pickleball, you're saying I should add to this the mental intuitiveness that you get from it.
Yeah, making quick reactions based on what's happening is really good for your brain. And so they've proven that fast reaction activities in sports help stave off all the different, Alzheimer's and all the different problems that you can have with your mental deterioration.
Well, if you guys agree with all of these and can't think of any other ones, I'd love to get in one more time, Autumn, with you on the addictive appeal thing. What is it about it that makes it so addictive? Because I do know all of my pickleball friends, it's all they talk about, literally. Like I try to have conversations about other things. They just want to talk about pickleball all the time.
Well, I can't speak for others, but I know my personality is a very competitive personality. I grew up in sports. I was a collegiate soccer player. And so like you mentioned prior, which I think is a very valid point, is that it's easy to move up in the ranks. And because it's easy to move up in the ranks, I have that competitive nature of, okay, I'm going to move up in the ranks and I'm going to do whatever it takes. Now, granted, I don't have time to drill like most people. So when I go out and play recreationally, I think that's where my addiction comes. It's not so much an addiction where I have to go out and play all the time, but it's an addiction of I'm gonna play as hard as I can in the time that I'm given.
So you can win.
Yeah, I want to win and I want to get better and I want to improve.
I'm the male version of you because, and Rob can attest to this, I've always been the most, competitive person in the family. And I don't think there's any other sport I could play at 55 years old where I could have 11 medals in my medal box right now. So that part of it makes it addictive for me, the kind of the pursuit of hardware, the ability to rack up medals in a sport. I don't think there's anything else I could do that in. That's a really good point.
I think the evolution that you go through is really interesting because there's the person who is at the stage of just wanting to do something socially and to be active. And then there's the person who sort of summons up that competitive juices and then they fall in love with playing and then they say, let me try a tournament. So what I like in the average going out and just playing socially is sort of like speed dating. What's nice is there's nothing worse than going golfing and getting stuck in a golf cart with somebody you're not meshing with, right? And then you're going to be 4.5 hours with that person. And there's nothing wrong with them, but we're just not meshing. It's not a fun experience. Pickleball is 11 points, and then you go put your paddle back in the thing, and you get mixed up into a whole different grouping, and you can play. So there's so much social element to it. It's literally like speed dating. It's kind of like that. And then as you fall in love with the game while you're having fun and getting social interaction, you're getting in touch with your competitive side, and then you want to try that tournament. And then so there's different evolutions that are going on, and everyone's arriving at a different time. You might play once a year, and you're never getting the competitive juices going that make you want to do a tournament, but you're enjoying it for what it is. It's that. But then there's the person who's playing more and more and more, and they're spiraling in a good way towards tournaments and leagues and making it an important part of their exercise regimen. And so it's very individual. There's a social element to it. There's a fitness element to it. And if you look at all the benefits, the health benefits are pretty large.
All of these are big.
But it's getting easier and easier to play, and it's getting easier to, hey, do you want to go try it out? And I've never played it before, but I can pick up a paddle and immediately start playing decently. So there's so many positives.
You know, after I typically take my convertible when I go play pickleball. It's just a fun thing I like to do. And Autumn, I feel so good when I go get back in the convertible after playing for 90 minutes, even if it's just open play. And I just feel so happy and I feel so light. And I got a good workout. I met some people playing the sport that I love. And it's just a great feeling.
Yeah. I mean, you got all those endorphins running. And I think one thing that you can add to this list is that, you put cheap to play, but it's also easy to play. Like, it's easy now to find places to play.
Yeah.
Now with all the facilities popping up and Parks and Rec adding these courts. So I think that would be another bullet point I would add to this.
That's a really good point. Yep. Easy to play. Well, let's take a look at the two best players in the world, Ben Johnson, Anna Lee Waters. She reached number one when she was 17 years old. I think he was 19 when he reached number one. The two of them have been racking up singles trophies and medals, and then together they've been winning doubles tournaments. I did notice, though, in the past year, there have definitely been a lot of good challengers to these guys. They've actually been losing a little bit more sometimes. So that tells me that the sport's getting filled up with a lot of really good pros. But any thoughts, Autumn, about kind of the evolution of the game at the pro level, the pro leagues, where you think it's going?
Well, I think it's only growing. And I think that it's just gaining more popularity. As I mentioned, they went to rally scoring, which makes it easier on the TV time, which allows more viewers to watch and to be engaged. And so yeah, I enjoy watching. Do I get time to watch as much as I want to? No. But I do believe that this is here's one point I'd like to make is I do remember when all these professional athletes were buying teams and owning their own teams when it comes to pickleball.
Yeah.
That was a way to gain exposure or to gain have pickleball gain popularity. And I think now it really doesn't matter who owns a team. The sport in and of itself has become popular enough to where viewers are wanting to watch and are enjoying it.
And you'll notice in the PPA and the U.S. Open and the new league you mentioned is coming in, there's a lot of sponsors now. And as soon as there's sponsors, there's money in the game. I know Ben Johns was the first $1 million pickleball player. He signed a $1 million contract with Jula, which is his paddle maker. So now that there's actually money in the game, the purses are getting bigger. It's only going to grow more. You're going to have more athletes coming in.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts about strategies that these individuals use at this level that maybe the intermediate player doesn't use? You mentioned some of the things your husband used to do. What are some of the strategies? I guess the whole game is always at the kitchen line, first of all.
Yeah. I mean, coming up to the kitchen obviously is one of the biggest things. And I think most tennis players have an issue with that, as you'd mentioned before. I mean, there are a million different strategies that we could talk about. I mean, a couple of them is, aim behind your opponent, making them move, serve to your opponent's backhand, being patient. I think that in and of itself is a telling sign to me of a more advanced player, especially in the kitchen when you're dinking, being patient and not always going after what you think is going to be a kill shot. Understanding that when you're playing with a partner, that your shot isn't always the winning shot. It's more important to set up your partner so that they could have the winning shot or the kill shot. Serving deeply, returning deeply, I think are really two big proponents of the game that is going to make your game excel. So there's a lot of different things that these pro players that, of course, me only being a 4.0. I mean, if you look at Duper,
only being a 4.0.
yeah, but if you look at Duper now, like if you look at Duper, there are players that I'm surrounded by that are in the 6s, you know, like 5s and 6s, which is
Really?
it blows my
Wow.
mind. They're not in the professional world. And so 4.0, I think, is really when you just start becoming really competitive. And I think 4.0 is now becoming the new 3.5. I do believe that.
Really?
I think that, like you said, there are so many players advancing and becoming so good at the game that that you're gonna find that the top skill levels just being flooded now.
No doubt. Well, Autumn, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the podcast to talk about pickleball, the pickleball craze. I think all three of us agree, Rob, you, me, that it's not a fad like people were saying it was. It's a craze, and it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to be really fun and exciting. I know that it's become a big part of the Pope family as well. We really enjoy it. And when we go on vacation, when we go down to our beach house, we always build in a little bit of pickleball time to kind of pass the time and enjoy and get some exercise.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was awesome talking with you both.
Awesome. Hey, guys, listen, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you go check out the Play Pickleball Facebook page and website. And thank you, Autumn. We'll see you guys next time.